So the formal way to define these things is in terms of decision problems, which comes in chapter 3.2.3. So this is where we meet decision problems. And the classes, our two favorite classes, P and NP. So a decision problem intuitively is just one with a yes or no answer. So that's the intuition that I want you to have, and we'll be a little more formal about it. So a decision problem is one with a yes or no answer. For example, is this number prime? Would be a decision problem. It's one with a yes or no answer. The formal way we define this is in terms of what we call a language over an alphabet. So let me motivate that with this example of a decision problem. Is this number prime? Let's call that number n. And how could we get some traction on this? We could represent n in binary. For example, n being, let's use a small number, 2, 0, 0, 1, 0. So our alphabet is going to be sigma, denoted sigma, and that'll be the set of binary numbers, 0, 1. We'll call this our alphabet. And we're going to consider the set of all finite strings over this alphabet. And we'll use the following notation to indicate that. Sigma star. So sigma with a superscript asterisk is a set of all finite strings of characters, symbols from this alphabet. So for example, that would be 0, 1. Those are all the strings of length 1. Then it would be 0, 1, 1, 0. Well, I could start at 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, and so on and so forth. So this sigma star is the set of all finite strings over this alphabet. And we're going to call a subset of this, subset of sigma star, a language on the alphabet sigma. So for example, using this question, this decision problem, is the number n prime, we would be interested in the following language, L being defined as the set of all binary numbers, or just numbers P, such that P is prime. Okay. And formally, the way we do a decision problem is then we ask if this input n is in this language. So is n in L would be the way that you formally define a decision problem. This is what we're going to use to state our complexity classes. And the first one is P. So definition of our first complexity class. I'm just going to write a problem. I'll include it in parentheses, decision problem. So throughout today and throughout the normal discussion of computational complexity, it's understood that we're talking about decision problems when we say problems. Okay? So a decision problem of input size n is in the class P, so we're defining the complexity class P, if and only if it can be solved in a time that scales polynomially. It can be solved in time order n to the k for some constant k. Okay? So P standing for polynomial. polynomial, we can use our big O notation from last time. So if it can be solved in time that's bounded above asymptotically by some n to the k, some polynomial, then we say that is a problem that is in P, can be solved in polynomial time. Okay. The next class, so these are the two that you sort of absolutely must remember. Hopefully you've seen them before. Same thing, a decision problem. Is in the class NP if its solution can be verified in polynomial time. So a decision problem is NP if given a solution. So what do I mean by a solution? That would mean a yes answer to this decision problem. So something being in the language. If given the solution, it can be verified in I'll just write polynomial time. And again, that means order n to the k for some k. So, question for you, what is the relationship between these classes? One of them is a subset of the other one. It's going to be the case that clearly P is a subset of NP. Why is that? Well, if I'm able to solve a problem in polynomial time, I'm certainly able to check that it's a solution in polynomial time. Okay? How would I verify that it's a solution? I would just run the algorithm for solving the problem, and that takes polynomial time. Okay? So the other direction appears to be less clear. So whether NP is a subset of P, implying that P is equal to NP, is open. This is one of the famous Clay problems, millennial problems. So you get $1 million if you figure out this one, and a lot more than that in terms of the other things that you would get. So let's see an example of a problem that's in NP. We'll see several today, but the one I want to start with is Sudoku. So I think this is an intuitive one. So how many people have seen Sudoku? Yeah, so we're always considering it, the size of the board varying, and so we'll call the size of the board n here. And Sudoku looks something like this, at least a 3x3 case. You have to fill out every row, every column, and every square with the numbers for 3x3 at least, 1 through 9. So I could have something that looks like this. And say this is 4, 6, 7, 3, 2, 1, and then 5, 9, 7, 8, 1, 6. Okay, so as long as I did this right, this row has the numbers 1 through 9, this column has the numbers 1 through 9, and then this square has the numbers 1 through 9. So given a board that starts, something like this, your task is to go through each square and fill out a number such that these conditions are satisfied. Every row, every column, and every square contains exactly once the numbers, the digits 1 through 9. So it might be hard to solve, but with NP, we're not asking about solving it. With NP, we're asking, given a solution, can I verify that it's a solution in polynomial time? So what do you think? Is this a problem that's in NP? If you're given a solution, could you verify that it's actually a solution in polynomial time? The answer would be yes. What would you have to do? The size of the board is n by n, but how many rows are there? There's going to be like n rows, so that's linear in n. How many columns are there? And then how many squares are there? So all those will be polynomial linear in n. So given this, you can check a solution is actually a solution in time polynomial in the input. Therefore, this is a problem that's in NP. All right, so this brings us to the idea of a reduction in theoretical computer science. So we're going to call a function f from the set of all finite strings sigma 1 star to another set of all finite strings sigma 2 star. And we'll refer to this, or we'll think of this as two problems. So here you can think this is defining a decision problem A, and this is defining another decision problem B. We're going to call this function a reduction. There's many different kinds of reductions. A mapping reduction, many-to-one reduction. Here we're only going to be caring about polynomial reductions for today. So I'll put in parentheses a polynomial reduction. If and only if the following are true. So it's a polynomial reduction from A, decision problem A, to decision problem B. If and only if the following two conditions hold. First, for all x, for any x in sigma 1 star, x is in A if and only if f of x is in B. So what does this mean? I'm using our sort of semi-formal definition of a decision problem. So remember, something being in a set, a language, is a yes answer to that decision problem. So how do you think about this? Given a solution to A, this implies that we also have a solution to B. Okay? And I'll write that down in a moment. The second condition that we need is that f is computable, this function itself is computable in polynomial time. Okay? So that's the polynomial reduction, the polynomial part of this reduction. So that's a little bit formal. How should you think about this? The intuition is simple. It's saying that any instance of problem A is also an instance of problem B. So any instance of A is an instance of B. And the language that we'll use is we'll say that A is reduced to B. There's some very nice notation that's used to help understand what's going on here, which doesn't appear in the textbook, I don't believe, but I do want to write it down for you because it helps your understanding. So the notation that we'll use is that A is less than or equal to, with a subscript P, P for polynomial, B. Okay? So as I mentioned, there's many different kinds of reductions. So this notation you'll see, especially if you take a theoretical computer science class, you'll see with different subscripts depending on the type of reduction that you're thinking about. In this case, in this course, we're only going to care about polynomial reductions. So A less than or equal to subscript P, B, and we say that as A is reduced to B. What does this mean? This means that if B is easy, then A is easy. Okay? If B is easy, A is less than or equal to B, A is also going to be easy. What do we mean by a problem being easy? Referring back to this, problem is easy or efficient or tractable if it can be solved with a number of resources that scales polynomially. Otherwise, it's going to be hard, inefficient, or intractable. Okay? So there's an ordering here of the problems. That's what a reduction is telling you about. If B is easy, A is also easy. The other direction is going to be true as well. So if A is hard, then B is also going to be hard. Okay? So this concept of a reduction is very important because it allows us to impose some order on complexity. And that's what we're going to see in the complexity classes. So we will have the following definition. A problem, let's call that problem L, is NP hard. So I've defined the class NP. Now I'm going to define the class NP hard. If every problem in NP can be reduced to L. Okay? So this is a sort of qualifier to a complexity class. It holds for any other complexity class. Here I'm just going to define it for NP, but given any other complexity class, you can also define the hard version of it. This notation is going to help us understand this. So this means that for any other problem M, it is reducible to L. So M is no harder than L for all M in the class NP. Okay. So in a way, this problem L is the hardest instance of a problem that you'll find in a given complexity class. And we do that, we're able to say this through this reduction. So if this problem L is easy, then any other problem in the class would also be easy to solve. We'll also have the qualifier of complete. So a problem is NP complete. So here I'm defining complete. Again, similar note, it would hold for any other complexity class, but here we're just doing it for NP. If it is NP hard, so two things. One, it's NP hard. And then the second thing is it's also in NP. Okay? So NP hard makes, a problem being NP hard makes no restriction on where the class is. It's just relating it to every other problem that's in NP. So NP complete is going to be, the problem is both NP hard and it's also in the class NP itself. So let's see a diagram to help us understand what's going on here. So let's have the hardness of a problem being along this axis. And we're going to have first the class P. So every problem that can be solved in polynomial time. We know that P is a subset of NP. So we'll have the class NP being here. As we stated, it's not clear whether the other direction is true. So it's not known whether these two classes are equal. But we can write down the hard version of these classes using this sort of line of complexity. So if this is a class NP, and this is our axis of hardness, then NP hard is going to be to the right of this, everything that's at least as hard as the things in NP. So the class NP hard would be visualized like this. NP hard here is at least as hard as everything in NP. This intersection is exactly the class of problems that are NP complete. The example that I wrote down for you of Sudoku is actually one example of this. So some example problems that are NP complete. Sudoku, again, I'm not going to write N here, but it's always understood that the size of the problem is varying. You'll also have Tetris is another example problem that is NP complete. We'll see a few more classes, so we'll come back and add to this. But for now, this is the layout that we have of the complexity landscape.